October 31st is the official anniversary of my book. And I thought what I would do right now is really share with you how it's been going in terms of a podcast tour. Welcome to the Mom Found Your Imagination Hub, your weekly podcast to inspire you to dream bigger. Plan out how you're going to get to that next level in business, find the energy to keep going, and make sure your creative juices are flowing so that this way you get what you really want rather than having to settle. Get ready to discover how mom founders have reimagined entrepreneurship and motherhood. Ever wonder how they do it? Tune in to find out and stretch yourself by also learning from diverse entrepreneurs who might not be moms, but who have lessons you can tailor about how you can disrupt industries and step way outside of your comfort zone. I believe every mom's superpower is her imagination. In this podcast, I'm going to give you the mindset, methods, and tools to unleash yours. Sounds good? Then keep listening. I cannot believe it's been a year since I published my book, Fertile Imagination. Happy birthday. Oh my God. So October 31st is the official anniversary of my book. And I thought what I would do right now is really share with you how it's been going in terms of a podcast tour. Let me explain. I have been a guest on other podcasters' podcasts. And in doing so, I have been able to really share some intimate stories in terms of behind the scenes moments of having written the book, starting in Australia, finishing here in Austin. Also, I've been able to share things like my birth story, who would have thunk it, Sir Plunkett. I have had such a grand time really being on other people's platforms because it is one thing to write a book and another thing to really witness how it's made an impact in terms of the readers and also the listeners too, because now it's an audio format. Did you know that? I have a hardcover, I have a paperback cover, and an audio book format as well. So please, if you're interested in the book, just go to fertileideas.com. This will be in the show notes, and you can just get a free chapter to start with. It is on that page right there. And you can also really join in on the fun. But this episode is really about the podcasters that I've had the pleasure of meeting this entire season post book launch. And my book, again, it's going to be 1 year. It's going to be one on Halloween. And so it's coming up. And so that is why I wanted to today really just start celebrating, right? And I want to be sure that it is going to be a worthy celebration. I'm not going to play Kool and the Gang Celebration, which, by the way, was my very first favorite song ever, which tells you how old I am, but I don't care because my book is one. But I do want to just kind of like express my gratitude before I go into this list. So what I did was I curated a list of the podcasts that I have been a guest on, where I have really met people with amazing personalities, with wonderful questions, with a level of depth to them that is very, very admirable. And I definitely am learning from. And I want to be sure that in this conversation with you, my beautiful dear listener, that you have a good idea of which podcasts are absolutely worthy of your time and attention. Because I know there's so many out there, but not a lot of them are saying something new. And I want to be sure that I put these guys on your map, on your radar, in your iTunes list. And because of that, I wanted to be a little bit, how should I say, organized. So we're going to do this in a fairly frameworked fashion. Again, a little bit of my B school just pouring through the audio waves here. I'm going to share with you about 11 or so of the podcast guest appearances that I've most enjoyed this year. Again, my book is turning one on Halloween. That is why I'm sharing these episodes with you. And I'm just going to give you a little bit of the behind the scenes, but we're going to go through each one in terms of these three concepts. So the focus of the conversation, I want to give you a little bit of snippet of that. Then we're going to go into why it stood out. And this is more like the behind the scenes. So a lot of times, and if you're a podcaster, you know, we're not recording when some of the best parts happen and conversations happen. So I want to reveal a little bit of those moments in this episode. And then the third thing we're going to go through is why you should listen to these podcasts. So I curated these podcasts for you, and I've been on every single one. And for me, it's been a blessing and it's been amazing. And I want to be sure that you too find the nuggets that they offer and that you can apply to your own life. So, this one, again, top 11 or so podcast guest appearances that I've been on since my book was born on Halloween almost a year ago today. So, here we go. So it's not in a particular order. I'm not ranking this, okay? This is not like, you know, corporate America performance evaluation, not at all. So I want to just give a shout out to Mom Shine. So this one, I will say from a focus perspective, when I was speaking with the host, Alicia, we were talking about harnessing our superpower, right? And if you read the book or you know what a fertile imagination is, it's about, you know, having this ability to envision something that you have never seen before done by any mom in your circles. And so we spoke about that. And what I really thought stood out with regards to this conversation with Alicia is something that my dad is going to be like definitely giving me a heck of a lot of, I don't even know, compliments or whatever on, which is this. I shared on this podcast of Mom Shine this notion of compensation versus aggravation. So this is what stood out for me. Alicia got me talking about something that I was taught by my dad as a little girl. And so here's the idea. If you are in a work environment where your compensation is very, very low in relationship to the level of aggravation that you feel, that is a sign that you must leave. So that is something that stood out for me in terms of Mom Shine and in terms of my conversation with Alicia. And I definitely want you and encourage you to listen to Mom Shine. And why is that? So here's the thing. Alicia definitely produces quality work. She is absolutely, I mean, she's been on the helm of like corporations that have grown exponentially, many of whom you've heard of, but I'm not going to say here because I don't want to get it wrong. But again, check out Mom Shine. Amazing conversations there with Alicia. And check out my episode on Mom Shine. All of this is going to be in the show notes, by the way. So you don't have to take notes and you don't have to memorize these things. Just check out the show notes and you'll get a link to every single one of these highly curated podcasts on which I have been a guest throughout this last year, almost in time right now, delivered to you by my book's birthday. Again, that's going to be on Halloween. So, oh my God, don't forget to like reach out to me on Instagram. Let me know if you got a copy, if you read it, let me know. Just tell me happy book birthday. I would be so grateful. Second podcast that I wanted to share with you that was sensational. Birth as We Know It by Kiona. So here was the focus. This is really focused. And I apologize if you have kids listening, but just understand I'm going to use a word that starts with a V. So here is basically the title to that episode, Birth as We Know It. She's a doula, so please be mindful of where I'm going with this. So she says, 3 vaginal births, twins, Gabriel, Noah, Nicholas. Yes, we talked about my birth process, story, experiences in very great detail. It's not often that you get to tell your birth story, especially when you've had a great birth story to tell. And the reason why I want you to really consider this conversation with Kiona and Birth as We Know It is because I think it is so important to actually have good stories of triumph when it comes to giving birth. I know so many hard stories, and I frankly was scared beyond my imagination when I was a first time mom for obvious reasons. It's the first time, you have no idea how it's going to go. But then also when I was birthing my identical twins, I was completely petrified and just in a place of fear for about 36 weeks, but who was counting? So that's why you want to check out Birth as We Know It, right? So the focus was my vaginal births. Yes, plural, everybody came out that way. But then on top of that, what stood out was also with Kiona. She was so generous, so generous. She let me go on and on in terms of the birth story, and she does that for all her guests. So I want to just call her out for that. That's amazing. And then in terms of why you should listen to Birth as We Know It, it's for you if you're scared. If you're pregnant and you're scared, go to her podcast. Also, please be mindful, read to see which one you want to listen to. I don't know all the birth stories, but just like our thumbprints or fingerprints, like we're all different. So there might be some more encouraging stories and more scary stories. And I know that was grammatically incorrect, but I'm going to go with it. So, Birth as We Know It, Kiona, third one. There's 11 here. So, 100% Guilt-Free Self-Care by Tammy Hackbarth. Focus. The focus was about creating your own opportunities, right? So having the guts to, you know, talk to strangers, go to concerts, go backstage and all of that jazz. So here's something that was stands out as far as 100% guilt-free with Tammy. So first of all, Tammy has a sense of humor and a half. So you will absolutely enjoy the conversation, any of the conversations. But the one with Tammy and myself, we actually did it so that we were focused on her being my guest and me being her guest. So we did a back-to-back recording. So I encourage you to check out the conversation, 100% guilt-free self-care with Tammy. She, again, like I said, why should you listen? Because she's very personable and she's a fair play method facilitator. If you want to learn more about that, you got to check out her podcast. So absolutely check it out. All right, another podcast. Again, we're going for 11. Right now we're at 1, 2, 3. This is the fourth. From Startup to Wonder Brand with Nicholas Kuhn. This one comes from Oslo, Norway. Yes, I will be going to Oslo at some point. Can't tell you when, but I will. So, okay, the focus here is totally unlike anything else I've ever had a conversation about, which is how to teach our kids how to network from a global perspective. When I was having that conversation with Nicholas, like I was so thrilled. You would think somebody gave me like a free Cat's Delicatessen sandwich or something, or like those wedge fries that they have, or potato fries, whatever. But they weren't. I was just excited because I got to talk about the world, my children, and speak to someone that understood and appreciated the nuances of marketing and advertising, which is my background. So that was really cool. So why you should listen, because if you're a parent, this is going to inspire you and give you some global ideas in terms of what stood out. The fact that, Nicholas was open to talking about children and expat situations and whether or not, kids should or they benefit from moving to different countries or different places. So I thought that was really cool. And why you should listen, because Nicholas has a smorgasbord of guests, and it's really appealing to hear from someone that has experiences living in very different countries. I speak of the host himself, Nicholas. So check it out. From Startup to Wonder Brand with Nicholas Kuhn. Alrighty, Disruptive CEO. Okay, so I want to just share the backstory here. I met Allison Summers at Podcast Movement, and she's the one that told me how to become a #1 Amazon bestseller. So Disruptive CEO Nation is her podcast. She is in Chicago. She's affiliated with the American Marketing Association. And Allison is sensational. The focus was leadership and innovation. I believe that I spoke about Beth Comstock, who's in my book, former CMO of GE. What stood out again is really, it's Allison. It's about the host, right? So she really helped me become a #1 Amazon bestseller. 100% beyond shadow of a doubt, totally grateful to Allison. So Disruptive CEO, definitely if you work in corporations and want to ascend to leadership, definitely check out Disruptive CEO Nation. And if you want to hear stories, that is a place to go. Disruptive CEO Nation. So let me get this on this rank. I should have been more like David Letterman, and gone through the top 10 or whatever. But I'm a mom. I'm not David Letterman, right? Okay, so let me just count this here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So now we're on the 6th podcast where I was a guest, and you might really enjoy. This podcast So global here, right? This is how I get to talk about the book and never leave my house and not have to get childcare, by the way, going on podcasts versus being on physical stages. So that's a mom hack right there. The podcast is Found Your Podcast with Ash. Ash is located in London town. And it was a great conversation for a couple of reasons, but the focus was about entrepreneurship and expansive thinking. And it really keyed in on leads. So, as a business owner, that's a really big challenge, getting leads for a lot of us. And so, we talked about that at length, also talked about parenting. And what stood out for me was that he got me to reveal so many secrets about what's working now to get leads. So, definitely, if you have a SaaS product, especially because his podcast is geared towards people that are in that world, check out Ash's podcast. Again, he is in the UK. If you're YC graduate or you've heard of that organization, he was an alumni. Okay, so 7 out of about 11 podcasts that I've been on. And here's the thing, I've been on so many more podcasts. And if you have a podcast that you enjoy, I would love to hear about it because I'd want to be on that podcast too. So just DM me on Instagram. All of that information is in the show notes. But here we go. The 7th out of the 11th podcast that I am right now celebrating having been on. It is Mastermind Parenting Podcast with Randy Rubenstein. I hope I said it correctly. It's so funny when you have 11 different last names, it gets to be a little bit complicated. But here we go. Mastermind Parenting Podcast with Randy Rubenstein. So the focus was strong-willed business and strong-willed kids, actually. Randy's perspective was on kids. My perspective was on business. And we were on each other's podcast. And I really enjoyed it because we talked about the parallels between being a mother and being a business owner. So that's what stood out for me. And that is also why you will want to listen if you have a strong-willed kid, especially. And if you have a business that feels like a strong-willed kid, you will also want to listen. It was an episode that I really enjoyed. Okay, so here is the 8th one. Again, we're going for about 11, give or take. This is a great name. You're going to really like this name. It's called The Boss Hole Chronicles. Okay, so best podcast name. Let me just say it right there. John Brewer interviewed me, and what I would say the focus was really about, having a corporate mindset. And what I thought was amazing is that you can be your own boss hole. And that is kind of where I netted out with the conversation with John. So if you're a female who works in a corporation or you have your own business and you're a mom, oftentimes we are harder on ourselves than our bosses technically are on us. And I want you to be mindful of that. But check out the Boss Hole Chronicles. I was on that podcast. John is amazing and you will enjoy the conversation. It is definitely more for corporations, even mid-sized companies as well. So check it out. Everything is in the show notes. Do not delay. I am definitely sharing all these links with you because I want to be sure that you check out these podcasts. They are amazing and I'm so grateful. So here's another one, Networking in the AI Era. So this one is really cool in the sense that when I had this interview scheduled, it was like a 24-hour turnaround. And the person who interviewed me, it's so hilarious. I have everybody's name except his, but I think this is Jonathan. He actually shared with me so much wisdom as far as building my own business when the recording button was off, which is always the case, right? So networking in the AI era, the thing that was the focus was really being authentic and not using AI in order to orchestrate conversations that are fake, but using it to help you research as an example. And then what stood out, as I said, was just, the podcast host openness to sharing business building insights off record. And I appreciate him so much for that. And why you should listen, because he's got his stuff together. I mean, he's really talking about AI in general. And so if that is a topic on your heart, I use ChatGPT, by the way, every day, all the time, then I encourage you to check out Networking in the AI era with me, Melissa Lorena. I was a guest on that podcast. Alrighty, so three more and that's it. Just three more, but these are really great. And I wanted to be sure I got them to you before my book birthday, which is on Halloween. Okay, when Mommy Grows Up by Becca and Marie. So it's two moms. And I had such a great time on this conversation or this podcast because the focus was about, having our own village when it comes to building our business, not just when we want to raise a family, but for our business purposes. And what stood out for me was Becca and Marie's level of knowing my book. So there's some times where it feels a little eerie. It's like, wow, they're using my words. They read my book, they're like thinking and using my terms. And sometimes it's like eerie if you've never written a book, but it was really cool because it's like, dag, they're really busy and they read my book and they found a lot of value. So go to When Mommy Grows Up if you're interested in like career transition sort of conversations and insights. Okay, two more. I promise. I'm like that birthday girl that just does not want to leave the dance floor. And if you know me, like personally, you know what I mean. Okay, so two more podcasts where I've been a podcast guest that I want to be sure you check out because I think they're worthy of your mom time. They can make for great, great, great parts of your weekly habits. Are dun dun dun. This podcast here is called And Both Podcast. It is by Ashley Blackington. So here was the focus of the conversation. It was really about untapped business potential in you as a mom. And we got very mom and business specific in terms of what's possible and what might be harder to accomplish, but possible with imagination. And so my conversation with Ashley is definitely one that you'll want to consider, especially if you're a mom who maybe you want to get funding from investors. Ashley's on that journey. So you might want to learn from her from that perspective. Or maybe you want to have a better handle and hold on your childcare or caregiving logistics because Ashley is coming up with an app that is essentially the first CRM designed for families. So there you go. Check out that podcast and both podcasts. Okay, so last but not least, because there are so many other podcasts I've been on, I've been grateful this whole year to be on other people's podcasts. So last but not least is Cozy Podcast, and it's spelled Koze. Here's the reason why having the conversation with Garrett Wood was amazing. So the focus was really about the book, Fertile Imagination. Like, what is a fertile imagination? What inspired me to write the book? How is it that I could apply it in my life? That's where the conversation went. And I have answers to that in this episode with Garrett. So I have it in the link. And again, the podcast is called Cozy. Here's the thing. There are so many opportunities as a podcast host myself to really help the guests feel at home and feel very safe and nurtured and cozy, right? And Garrett is an ace at that. So that is what stood out for me. She made me feel so welcome. I really felt like, the intangibles of my journey were captured in that episode. And I encourage you to listen to her podcast, Cozy, or to buy her nipple cream if you're breastfeeding. So a lot of these podcasters are like me. We're mom founders. So we've got a lot of things going on, but we have a message worthy of amplifying and sharing with the world. And if you've ever felt like you wanted to launch your own podcast, or perhaps you have had a podcast, but you got to episode number 7 and you didn't go on from there, then this can be a moment to just reflect upon why you let it go and maybe you should start again. And maybe I could be your guest next, right? So I just want to say from the bottom of my heart, from the bottom of my tiny toe on my right foot, if I had to be real specific, I can't express fully how strongly I feel about the community that I have around me in terms of fellow podcasters, fellow mom founders, and anyone who has read the book, reviewed the book on Amazon, purchased the book, or even mentioned the book, or lived out some of the ideas and concepts in the book. It is something that doesn't go unnoticed with regards to me as the author, because it's really intimidating putting yourself out there, especially in the written word, because it's quite permanent. It's not like I could go back into a landing page and make some edits. So I appreciate you. I am so celebrating my birthday on October 31st. This is the first episode where I'm talking about the anniversary or the book birthday. And I encourage you to follow me every single Tuesday for a new episode. So here's the thing. I want to be sure that you and I are like two peas in a pod. And this is how we can actually achieve that. If you're watching this on YouTube, I would encourage you to go ahead and subscribe officially. Here's why. When you subscribe, when I see that number go up, so it's like 200 and something right now. If it goes up to like, I don't know, 345 or something, then it actually makes me do a happy dance, right? So you know how like we might like buy drinks for like the birthday girl? Through subscribing, you're kind of virtually buying me a drink on YouTube. And so I encourage that strongly. Here's the other thing on YouTube. There's this like notification bell, which I know a lot of people tell you, they're like, please tap it, hit it, whatever it might be. However you want to get there, please select the bell so that you are notified when a video pops up. And if you're listening to this on iTunes, Spotify, Audible, however you're listening to this, I would encourage you to think about this. Let's make this relationship official. Actually hit follow. Hit follow, and this way you're going to get, without having to do anything, your mom, like why add things to your calendar? Make this seamless. You're going to be able to get a new episode every single Tuesday. All of this is in the show notes. You could totally just use it as like a quick way to tick off something that happened today, right? So if you hit the bell or if you hit subscribe or follow, add that to your to-do list and then like go ahead, check out the boxes so that you feel accomplished. So that's an idea for you. All right. So here's something that I wanted to just share with you. And I should have said it at the top, but I wanted to just kind of share this at the end. So here's like a tiny reveal before I let you go. On the day of the no, delete that. On the day of the actual launch, so October 31st, 2023, I actually realized that I was number one in two categories, but I was number three in another category. And I never told anyone. So you're the first one to hear that. So here's the thing. The book Fertile Imagination managed to get to number one in the category of motherhood, and also in the category of women in business. But the one spot, you could only pick three, where I wasn't number one, I was number three in, was women's biography. And here's the fun fact behind that. Do you know who was number one in women's biography? It was Jada Pinkett, and it was her book Worthy. And so I always thought to myself, I was like, well, you know what? If you've got all the money in the world and the resources in the world, I'll let you go ahead of me. Have no problem there. I don't even know who was number two, but for me, that just made me laugh because I was like, I'm okay with that. I'm totally okay if it's Jada's spot. So that's it for me. I mean, that is it. I'm so thrilled that you listened to this point because I mean, doing a top 10 list or top 11 or 12, whatever it was, might be a little bit more clunky than I had imagined, but I wanted to get this out to you because I really am grateful. And my birthday is coming for my book, October 31st, and I want us to celebrate together. This is not like a one person journey. No man, no mom is an island. I want to know what you're celebrating too. I want to know what questions you have in terms of writing a book, doing a podcast, launching a business, or growing a business. And to do that, let's keep on the same journey together. Follow, subscribe, hit the bell button, and any questions, I'm always on Instagram. So thank you so much. And until next Tuesday, happy birthday to Fertile Imagination.